The call came on a rainy Tuesday morning just as Samantha was finishing her coffee and scrolling through her emails. The phone number flashing on her screen made her stomach twist her stepdad. "Brad?" She hesitated, a sinking feeling already settling in her chest. When she answered, his voice was the last thing she expected to hear. "Hey, Sam," he said, with a tone that was too casual, too playful, like he was about to tell a joke. "I did something bold." Her heart started to race. "What do you mean?" she asked cautiously, a feeling of dread spreading through her chest. There was a pause, just long enough to make her panic, and then his laugh came, a sharp, careless sound that made her stomach drop. "I sold your cabin." Her mind froze. "What?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "The cabin by the lake, Sam. Your little mountain retreat. Gone. I sold it to pay off some debts." "Gambling debts," he said, and laughed again, the sound mocking. Cruel. Samantha gripped the edge of the counter, her knuckles white. The mountain cabin had been her father's pride and joy. A place he built with his own hands, a place filled with her happiest memories. Summer spent fishing on the dock with her dad, quiet evenings by the fireplace. Snow-covered mornings with hot cocoa. It was all gone now. Taken by the one man who should have protected it. You can't just sell it," she stammered, panic rising. "It's not yours to sell." Brad chuckled. "Life's short, Sam. Sometimes you pay your debts one way or another. Don't take it so hard." And just like that, he hung up. Samantha stood there staring at her phone as if it might somehow reverse what had just happened. Her heart felt heavy, each beat pounding in her ears. She sank onto the couch, the rain tapping against the window like tiny drums of despair. She couldn't believe it. How could he do something like this after everything her father had built? Her thoughts were a whirlwind. She remembered the countless times she had promised herself she would one day restore the cabin, make it perfect again, maybe even live there permanently. She could see the peeling paint, the old wooden floors, the way the light fell through the big windows in the morning. And now, gone. Samantha felt a mix of anger, heartbreak, and helplessness. She couldn't imagine facing Brad. He had always been reckless. But this felt like a personal attack on her and her father's memory. She didn't know whether to cry, scream, or throw the phone across the room. She did none of those things. Instead, she sat in silence, letting the weight of the news settle in, trying to decide what to do next. Then her phone buzzed. A message from Ethan, a man she had met online recently, appeared. He was kind, thoughtful, and attentive in a way no one else in her life had been. Their messages had always brightened her day, but this time seeing his name brought a sharp pang of longing and hope. "Hey, you okay? You sounded upset yesterday." Samantha's fingers hovered over the keyboard. Could she tell him? Could she share her heartbreak with someone new? Someone who didn't know her messy family? She wasn't sure, but deep down, she knew she needed support. Someone to talk to. Someone who could understand her without judgment. Her thoughts then turned to her father's will. She remembered vague mentions of the cabin in legal documents. Something about it not being sold without her consent. Could there be a loophole, some way to reclaim it? A tiny spark of determination lit inside her. She would find the papers and see if there was any way to reverse what Brad had done. Samantha rushed to her apartment desk, opening the folder labeled Dad's Documents. She sifted through old letters, bank statements, and legal files, heart-pounding with every paper she touched. Finally, she found it, a copy of her father's will. She skimmed through the text, her eyes scanning every line. There it was, the clause she remembered. The cabin could not be sold without her written approval. Her chest lifted with hope, a sense of victory blooming in the despair. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't completely powerless. But just as she started to formulate a plan, a notification popped up on her laptop screen. An email from the real estate office. She clicked it, heart racing, and froze at the words. "We regret to inform you that the property has been legally transferred to the buyer. All ownership rights have been signed off. There is no way to reverse this transaction at this time." Her heart sank again, heavier than before. Someone else now held the cabins, someone who didn't know her family, her father. Or the memories etched into every board, every nail, every tree surrounding the place. She felt a wave of frustration and grief wash over her. She had imagined facing Brad, demanding justice, reclaiming what was rightfully hers. Now, the battle seemed lost. Samantha sat back in her chair, running her hands through her hair, trying to think clearly. She felt the tears threaten to spill, but blinked them back. She couldn't afford to break down completely, not yet. Not when she had to figure out her next move. She needed a plan, a way to take back at least some control over her life. Even if the cabin itself seemed lost. Then another thought crossed her mind, sudden and unexpected. The buyer. Who was it? A stranger could be walking through her father's memories at that very moment, unaware of the history she held dear. The idea made her anxious, but also curious. Could she find out who it was? Could she reach out and explain? Maybe make them understand what this cabin meant. Maybe even convince them to let her be involved. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. Searching online for recent property sales in Pinewood Lake. Within minutes, she found a name, Ethan. Wait, Ethan? Her heart skipped. It couldn't be the same Ethan she had been talking to online, could it? She checked the details, the profile picture, location. And even the style of handwriting on the contact information matched. Her pulse raced. It had to be him. The same man who had listened to her, who had laughed with her, who had made her feel seen and understood. And now, fate had placed him in her life in the most unexpected way. Samantha felt a strange mixture of emotions, relief, fear, and curiosity all at once. The anger toward Brad didn't disappear, but it became sharper, directed, and purposeful. She had to confront the situation. She couldn't let her father's memory be brushed aside, not without a fight. But now, she wasn't alone. The thought of Ethan, the possibility of someone who might understand, someone who could help, gave her a sense of courage she hadn't felt in days, for hours. She planned her next steps, imagining what she would say if she met him, how she would explain the history, the love, the memories tied to the cabin. She thought about traveling to Pinewood Lake, standing in front of the cabin that once belonged to her father, and finally seeing who had it now. By evening, a plan had formed. Samantha would drive to the cabin, face the new owner, and hope for understanding. She wasn't sure what would happen, whether she would be turned away or welcomed. But she knew one thing for certain: she couldn't sit at home any longer, letting Brad's careless actions dictate her emotions. She had to act. As she packed a small bag for the trip, her phone buzzed again. Another message from Ethan. I know things are rough right now. Just remember, you're not alone. Samantha smiled faintly, feeling the tiniest spark of hope. Maybe losing the cabin wasn't the end. It might just be the beginning of something entirely unexpected. She grabbed her keys, a mixture of anxiety and anticipation thrumming through her veins. The rain had stopped, and the clouds were breaking just enough to let the first rays of evening sunlight through, reflecting on the puddles on the road that as she started the car and drove toward Pinewood Lake. Samantha felt a strange sense of determination. The cabin had been stolen from her, yes, but she wasn't giving up on it. Not on the memories, not on the legacy her father left, and not on the possibility that fate had led her to someone who might help her reclaim both the place and the hope she thought was lost. Little did she know, when she arrived, she would not only face the cabin's new owner, but also discover something. She hadn't expected a connection that could change everything she thought she knew about heartbreak, trust, and love. And just like that, the journey that began with betrayal was about to take an unexpected turn. Samantha didn't sleep much that night. Her mind kept spinning with images of the cabin, of Brad's careless laughter, and of the possibility that Ethan, the same man she had been confiding in online, might now own the place. By dawn, she had made up her mind. She packed a small bag, grabbed her jacket, and drove toward Pinewood Lake, the sun just beginning to rise over the misty pines. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of wet earth and pine needles, but Samantha barely noticed. Her focus was on the cabin and the unknown man who had taken it from her. When she arrived, the first thing she saw was the cabin itself, standing exactly as she remembered it, yet somehow different. A fresh coat of paint brightened the trim, and the garden looked cared for. Then she saw him. A man was kneeling near the porch, hammer in hand, adjusting a loose board. He looked up at the sound of her car door, his eyes locking on hers. Samantha froze, her heart skipping a beat. Hello, she called, trying to keep her voice steady. He stood slowly, brushing sawdust from his hands. Hi, he said, a small, cautious smile on his face. Can I help you? Samantha swallowed hard. I used to own this cabin, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The words felt heavy, but they had to be said. The man studied her for a moment, then smiled gently. I'm Ethan, he said. I bought it a few days ago. I know this isn't exactly the best timing. Her stomach flipped. It was him. The same Ethan she had been talking to online. The same Ethan whose messages had made her laugh. Made her feel less alone in the last few weeks. You're the buyer, she asked, her voice catching. He nodded. Yeah, I saw it was for sale, and I thought, well, I didn't want it to fall into the wrong hands. Something about it just called to me. His eyes softened as he spoke, and for a moment Samantha felt some of her anger fade. This man wasn't careless or selfish. Seemed to understand, even if he hadn't known her family. I didn't know someone would actually buy it, she said, her hands clenching into fists. It was my father's. It meant a lot to me. Ethan stepped closer, his voice calm, reassuring. I can see that. I wouldn't have bought it if I didn't think it deserved someone who cared. And honestly, I'd like you to help me take care of it, if you want. Samantha's heart skipped again. Help him. Work together to restore the cabin. It sounded almost too good to be true. And yet, standing there, looking at him, she felt a cautious hope rise inside her. Perhaps this was fate, giving her a chance not just to save the cabin, but to heal some of the hurt that Brad's betrayal had caused. Over the next few weeks, Samantha spent almost every day at the cabin with Ethan. They worked side by side, restoring the place to its former glory. They painted the exterior, repaired broken windows, and cleaned the dusty interior. Each task, no matter how small, felt like a step toward reclaiming her father's legacy and her own sense of peace. As they worked, they talked about the cabin, about their lives, their dreams, and their fears. Ethan listened to her stories about her father, about the summers she had spent learning to fish, about the nights spent by the fireplace. He never interrupted, never dismissed her feelings, and always offered a kind word or a thoughtful suggestion. Samantha realized that in him she had found someone who truly saw her, who understood her heartache without judgment. One afternoon, as they were repairing the dock, Samantha paused, looking out at the water. The lake was still and clear, reflecting the sky and the surrounding trees. She could almost hear her father's voice, giving her advice on how to tie a knot or cast a line. The memories were bittersweet, but having Ethan there made them feel alive again, not just lost in the past. Do you think it's strange?" she asked, not looking at him. "That I feel like I know you, even though we only met recently?" Ethan smiled, tightening a bolt on the dock railing. "Not strange at all. Sometimes people come into our lives at the exact right time, even if it seems random. Maybe we were supposed to meet this way." Samantha's chest warmed at his words. For the first time in days, she felt a sense of calm, of safety. The anger toward Brad was still there, but it no longer consumed her. She had found an ally, someone who could help her navigate the mess he had left behind. Evenings at the cabin became their favorite time. They would sit by the fireplace, sipping hot chocolate, sharing stories, and laughing at small things: a burnt piece of toast, a stubborn nail, or a bird that wouldn't leave the porch. Cabin, once a place of memories for just Samantha and her father, was slowly becoming a space where new memories were forming. Memories that included Ethan, that included warmth, trust, and perhaps even something deeper. One evening, after a long day of repairs, Samantha leaned back in her chair, exhausted but happy. Ethan noticed her quietness and asked, "You okay?" She nodded, smiling softly. "Better than I have in weeks. I thought I'd lost this place forever, and maybe I did, in a way. But having you here feels like I haven't lost it at all." Ethan looked at her, something unspoken passing between them.
I'm glad.
"Honestly, I was worried you'd be angry with me for buying it." "I didn't want to overstep." Samantha shook her head. "No, you didn't overstep. You saved it, in a way. And I think we can make it something even more special now." Their connection grew stronger every day. Samantha found herself looking forward to the mornings they spent laughing over breakfast, to the afternoons of work that somehow felt lighter when shared, and to the quiet moments at night when they would sit side by side watching the fire crackle and pop. There was a comfort in Ethan's presence, sense of safety she hadn't realized she had been craving. But even as she grew closer to him, a part of Samantha couldn't ignore the anger bubbling under the surface. Brad had taken something precious from her, and she knew she couldn't let it go without confronting him. Yet, for the first time, she felt ready. Ready not just to face him, but to do it with the support of someone who truly understood her. Someone who cared about her well-being, her happiness, and even her heartbreak. One rainy afternoon, as they painted the final touches on the cabin's porch, Samantha's phone buzzed with a message from Brad. She glanced at it, her fingers trembling slightly. Before showing Ethan, "It's him," she said quietly. Ethan read the message and gave her a reassuring look. "Do you want to reply?" Samantha shook her head. "Not yet. I need to face him in person, and I need to do it on my terms. I'm not that scared girl from the past anymore. I have my own strength now, and I have someone who's got my back." Ethan smiled and reached for her hand. "Exactly. And whatever happens, we'll handle it together." The days turned into weeks. The cabin, once silent and lonely, was alive again. The dock was sturdy, the garden flourishing, and the walls echoed with laughter and conversation. Samantha felt a sense of peace, of belonging that she hadn't felt in years. And through it all, Ethan was there not just as a helper, but as a partner, a friend, and maybe even something more. One evening, as they watched the sunset over the lake, Samantha realized she was smiling for a reason she hadn't expected. The cabin wasn't just a place now. It was a symbol of resilience, of moving forward, of love found in the most unexpected circumstances. She thought about Brad, about the betrayal, about the anger she had felt. And she realized that while she couldn't change the past, she could shape her future. She could protect what mattered, and she could let new beginnings bloom. Ethan broke the comfortable silence. "You know," he said, "I think your father would be proud. Not just of the cabin, but of you. The way you care, the way you fight for what matters. You're stronger than you realize." Samantha felt a lump in her throat, overwhelmed by the mix of emotions, grief, love, gratitude, and hope. She looked at Ethan, and for the first time, she let herself imagine a future where heartbreak didn't define her, where love and trust could grow again. "I hope so," she whispered. "I hope he'd be proud." Ethan squeezed her hand gently. "He would, and I think so would you for how far you've come." Samantha smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. The cabin, once stolen from her, had become a place of healing, laughter, and connection. And with Ethan by her side, she felt ready to face anything, even Brad, even the mistakes of the past, even the uncertainties of the future. She realized that sometimes losing something precious isn't the end, it's the beginning of something unexpected, something deeper, something that could fill her heart in ways she never imagined. And for Samantha, that something was right. In front of her, standing on the porch of her father's cabin, painting the railings, smiling, and holding out a hand that she could finally trust. The journey that began with betrayal, anger, and loss had brought her to a new chapter, one of love, hope, and the courage to reclaim what truly mattered.